Hello, the world. Thank you, Jane. Hello and welcome to Dublin for this next hour of the Inspirathon. I have literally just hot-footed it from the first ever Inspire Ireland event, which of course is another part of this program of helping organizations to think more about the people in your organizations and how, by working with them more closely, you can be more successful. And I guess that's what this Inspirathon is all about. As I said, you are very welcome to Dublin. I'm not wearing a leprechaun hat. I refuse to wear a green top, but you are in Dublin, Ireland. Thank God the rain and the thunder and lightning of yesterday has passed, because to be honest, I was bricking it that we might not even get online today. I'm Director of Inspiring Change. I'm going to be here with you for the next about 20 minutes, and then I'll be handing over to another couple of really high-profile, high-quality speakers to share their thoughts and insights from a couple of different places around the world. I'm really excited to be here today, just to maybe bring you through some of our local thoughts and thinking. We've done a bit of research that the guys have kindly put up on screen there today for me. This, of course, is being hosted live. You might be watching it recorded later on, as the whole event is being recorded, so you'll be able to watch it on demand after, and hopefully some of you will. Please don't forget to ask your questions over in the comments on the right-hand side. Hopefully we'll try and get to some of those, and if you have any comments, please make those too. Make sure to join the conversation on Slack. There's a very vibrant community there on Slack where you can meet fellow inspirers and participants of the Inspirathon, share ideas, share thoughts, ask questions, have conversations, and more importantly, perhaps to be a part of this ever-growing community. Of course, you're going to see on the Slack channel a lot of networking during the breaks. Again, that chance just to get to chat to some real people. I think it's something that we've missed, and actually we spoke a lot this morning on our Inspire Cities first outing about that sense of connection and belonging and how those things are so important. You've all been muted, so sadly it's just me that you will be able to hear. I'm not sure if that's a good thing or not, but please do whack into the comments any questions or thoughts that you have. Couple of great speakers on their way. Before that, what I wanted to do was to bring you through perhaps just a very high level overview of a couple of thoughts that we had based on a piece of research that we did earlier this year. Ireland is only a small country. We're about, between north and south, about 5.5 million people. So it's very rare that any of the big organizations who want to come and do market research come here and actually think about, well, I wonder what's going on in Ireland. Let's see, can we find out? So we wanted to do that. We wanted to find out what it was that people wanted from culture in Irish organizations. What is it they look for when they join them? What is it that would make them want to stay? So thinking about and talking through that whole idea of attraction of talent and retention of that new talent. Because of course it costs a bomb to find new people, to bring them on, to onboard them, to train them. What we don't then want to do is for them to leave. So what is it that we have to do in organizations to make sure that that doesn't happen? We went out, we asked 1,000 people, 1,000 adults. We had about a 70% response rate. And what I want to do is give you the top line results. We're currently pulling together the full report. If you'd like to get a copy of that, please whack your details into the comments, or you can reach me at LinkedIn, Scott McInnes, MCINNES, as you see there on the slide. Without further ado, let's have a look and see, first of all, why culture matters. And I think Dan, who was on just before me, he covered off a little bit of this as well for the 10 minutes or so of his presentation that I managed to see. When you think about attracting amazing talent, we found that 7 out of 10 people that we surveyed, and now starts to sound like family fortunes, if they had the choice between working between 2 very similar organizations for similar money and similar package, culture would be the reason that they would choose to work in one over the other. That's very powerful. If you have a toxic culture, people are not going to want to join your organization. Likewise, once they have joined, 7 in 10, so another 70% of our respondents said that the culture influences whether or not they keep wanting to work there. Gone are the days where our parents and our grandparents joined and were glad to get a job and stayed in that job for life. Gone are those days for sure. And I'm quite pleased because actually I quite want to have a portfolio career and move from organization to organization. But still, there's a balance. So organizations are having to look and say, well, what culture is it that we have to create in our organizations in order to keep people? Maybe it's for a lesser amount of time. Maybe it's only 5 or 7 years versus 25 years, but actually we don't want it to be 1 or 2 years. We don't want our turnover to be that high. What we'll do is, sorry, just a message that popped up on my screen. And then, of course, from an effort perspective, for those people who said that the organization's culture really influences whether they want to put as much effort as they can into their work. So do I just come in? Am I one of those tin soldiers that just comes in, waits to be told what to do, and then gets on with it, does it, and then goes home? Or do I actually want to put a little bit more effort up on the screen? Great cultures lead to great outcomes. Those who work in organizations with great cultures, and some of this isn't a massive surprise, but we just thought it was really nice to be able to put some stats on it. So from an advocacy perspective, nearly 90% of people who work in great cultures said that they would recommend the organization to a friend or a family member as a great place to work. So we're starting now to attract, through advocacy, potentially really, really good people. 84% of people who worked in great organizations and great organizational cultures said that they were more committed. They're going to want to stay longer because, as 83% said, they feel like they belong. That sense of belonging is really, really, really powerful. And of course, if we look back to some of the work that Engage for Success did 10 years ago, Dave McLeod and Nita Clark, 74% of saying that they would go out of their way to do extra things at work that aren't necessarily required. So that's really powerful when you think back to employee engagement and driving a little bit more discretionary effort. That's a really, really powerful thing that organizations know that I'm going to do that little bit more. I was in with the CEO of a fairly big sports chain here in Ireland, maybe 18 months ago, 20 months ago. And I said to him, you know, employee engagement, when you're employing people who are maybe on 10 or 11 euros an hour, they're 18 years old, they're coming into your shop at the weekend to earn their money to buy a few beers during the week. Them being engaged is the difference if you think about them going on their lunch. So they're heading out, they're going on their lunch break, they've got their sandwich and their Coke, whatever they've got, and they walk past a ringing phone. And that phone is ringing and it's ringing, but they're going for the lunch, they've only got half an hour. That engaged employee is going to want to do that extra thing at work that isn't necessarily required of them. They're going on their half an hour lunch break, but they are going to stop and pick up the phone. And as I said to him, that could be Ireland's next Olympic medalist on the phone there looking for their first pair of trainers or a tennis racket. So it makes a huge, huge difference. So we know that if organizations have really, really great, strong, authentic cultures, that people are going to want to do that little bit more. So what makes a great culture? What did we find in our survey? I think what was really surprising to us when it came out in the results was that it's an organization that respects employees. And of course, that starts to talk to diversity, equity, and inclusion. It starts to talk to the types of work that people are being asked to do. It talks to leadership and how people are spoken to and led in organizations. And it talks to a whole host of other things that we've been talking about for years, all of which, when they come together, drive respectful cultures. They respect employees. Of course, underpinning all of that is this whole idea of trust. And I often talk to leaders, and particularly, again, this morning at the Inspirathon, we spent a lot of time talking about values. We have values as organizations, but of course, those values have to be lived, not just by leaders, but by everybody across the organization. When those values aren't lived, when that lack of integrity starts to creep in, at number 3, I'm doing one thing, yet I'm saying another. When that integrity starts to creep in, a gulf opens up. And what does that do? that completely erodes trust, completely erodes trust in the organization. Of course, back to the point about DEI, the organization allows me to be myself at work. Again, we've spoken for years about people bringing their whole selves to work. It's become a little bit cliched. It's become something that's just said and not particularly well lived in many organizations. I think back to some of the big financial services organizations or others where actually it's a suit and tie. So actually, if you like wearing baggy jeans and a crop top, then sorry, this probably isn't the place for you to be. If you really truly want to bring your whole self to work because you're an avid creative, but actually we just want you to do spreadsheets, then actually that's not a good place for you to be. I think something that's very, very close to my heart is this whole idea of honest and transparent communications, because it underpins almost everything else that's in that list. It underpins respect because we're being open, we're being honest, we're being transparent. We tell people what they want to know rather than what we think they need to know. Of course, that honesty and transparency is driving trust because people say, well, if there's something that I need to know, my organization will tell me, which in turn drives integrity. So that whole idea of communication being at the very bottom of that list, underpinning everything else, is absolutely key, absolutely key. We went out and we asked some HR directors around Ireland, well, what do you believe, back to that idea of respectful cultures, what do you believe makes a respectful culture? Because we wanted to try and be really practical to give people a bit of advice as to what they can do to drive more respectful cultures. So they talked about things like people feeling valued and appreciated, that what they do matters. And of course, that has really strong ties back into recognition. It has ties into reward. But as I've said to leaders on my podcast and in presentations that we've done over the years, recognition isn't about a big program at the end of the year. Recognition is often about, that was a really good piece of work. Thanks very much. In a team meeting, really simple. Recognition, we were working with a client recently, and they said, I sometimes walk down the corridor and I'll walk past the CEO or one of the senior team and they won't say hello. Recognition. So often they're very, very small things that can make a very, very big difference. The HR directors we spoke about well-being, being protected and promoted. So we want to make sure that we're doing the right things for people. Back to my point at the very top about belonging. People want to feel as though they belong, that they're in a psychologically safe environment where they can share their concerns and ideas without fear, where they're treated with empathy, where perhaps leaders and others in the organization actually take a moment to walk in their shoes, to think about what it's like to be that person. So when I'm delivering news or I'm asking them to do something, I'm doing it in a way that's incredibly empathetic. I'm thinking about the person first, that the person's involved when changes impact them. You know, I once read a quote, which was, people don't mind change. They just don't like being changed. And that's so true. Involving people on a journey of change is going to smooth that journey so much more. There was a piece of research that IBM did a few years back about bringing people through successful change. And most of what they spoke about in terms of the things that helped on that journey was all around communications and leadership behaviors, bringing people into the tent early, telling them why what's happening is happening. All of that stuff that helps people to be involved on that journey. Communication is consistent. We think about internal comms as being broadcast. It absolutely isn't. It's two-way. It needs to be a conversation. It needs to be a conversation between the organization and its people. And that when those conversations come in from employees, that there's feedback into the organization that we've heard you, we've heard what you've asked, we've heard your concerns, and here's what we're doing to perhaps address them. Back to that piece around psychological safety, because this is quite a comfortable bedfellow around disrespectful behaviors. That, again, back to values. When disrespectful behaviors happen, when our values in our organization are not lived, that it won't be tolerated. When there's bad behavior in a meeting, that it won't be tolerated. That's even more important when you think about aligning with and living values. If you have a value which is, we treat each other with respect, the very first time that you're in a meeting and somebody is treated disrespectfully and somebody else in that meeting doesn't say something, all bets are off. Trust goes, integrity goes. So that whole idea of knowing that disrespectful behaviors will not be tolerated is absolutely key to respectful cultures. That people feel empowered, so they know what it is they need to get on with, and they can just get on with it. And of course, there's a piece in there as well around accountability, because we're very quick to talk about empowerment, but I think the flip side of that empowerment coin is accountability, is making sure that people are willing, when they are empowered, to take on accountability for actually delivering what they've been asked to do. Finally, about development. We all want to develop in our roles. What development looks and feels and sounds like to one person is not the same as what it looks and sounds and feels like to another. So what we need to do is get down and dirty with people and find out, well, from a development perspective, what is it you want and need? Because it might be a master's, or it might be an HR course, or it might be simply a job swap with somebody for a few weeks or something. It could be 100 different things, and organizations have to think about what those things are and prepare them and provide them for people. So in summary, before I hand off to our first speaker, which is Bryony, how do we create respectful cultures? Well, one, leaders set the tone. Leaders have to role model respective behaviors. Leadership isn't all about epaulets and stripes. Everybody in the organization is a leader, has to start at the top, but has to filter down through the organization. We need to have policies and procedures to help to formalize some of those respectful behaviors. So when we talk about our behaviors, our values, our norms, what are they? And what happens when they are trampled on, when they are not respected? We need to find the barriers and the pain points in our organizations, and we need to fix them because they exist. There's no point going out and saying, we want to be an innovative organization. You now have to be innovative if it's not going to happen. We need to agree team charters so that people on the ground know exactly what it is being asked of them, and together what it is they do to bring your values to life, to be more respectful in work, and to start to live your values. And of course, that respect has to extend not just inside the organization, but outside to all stakeholders, if it's going to be truly respected and credible internally.